Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, episode number 22, Meteor, 1979 movie that, well, a lot of us remember. Thank you for your patience tonight. Again, we were having some technical difficulties. Thanks for hanging in there. There's a storm is around, so Ross and I may kind of get a little disconnected at times. And with that, I want to introduce Ross. This is my co-host, my very special co-host for tonight. Ross is joining me for a third time, and he's the one and the only Mr. Ross Amico. Ross, how are you?
All right, how you doing, Roy?
I'm good, Ross. How you doing?
You have a good week?
Actually, I did. I'm doing pretty good. Believe it or not, my kidney stones are kind of acting up again. I kind of had a flare up a few days ago, so I'm kind of dealing with that a little bit. But other than that, it's not as bad as it was that I had about a month or so ago. But yeah, all things considered, I'm smiling. And yeah, proceeding on. I guess Meteor brought a smile to my face.
Like a tie-in to Meteor or something. Maybe you need Donald Pleasance. You have to shrink Donald Pleasance down and take care of your kidney stones. I'm sorry to hear about that, but
no, I'm hanging in there. I've actually just drinking lots of fluids and trying to get through it with that. But all things considered, though, it's all good. But thanks for asking.
Well, before we get started on this, did you hear Ian Holm died?
I did hear that. I heard about that first thing this morning. I was very sad to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, he was such a part of our movie-going experience, in the 80s and 90s. And of course, he was active right up until fairly recently. But yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, we go see Time Bandits and Greystoke, the Tarzan movie, and Henry V.
Yeah, Henry V especially. I mean, he's a classically trained actor, and he's done so much. And then also he did the 1979 movie Alien. I mean, he was Ash in Alien.
Ash is a goddamn robot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to see him go. I mean, really.
Yeah.
One of those actors where, yeah.
No,
one of those actors where I'd be eager to go see the movie if he's in it. Yeah.
I guess it's the scary thing, with everything that's going on, Ross. It's like, time is marching on. I mean, we're getting older. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, both you and I share a birthday next month, and we're going to both be the same age. Although I can honestly say that you are older than me. You old fart.
I'm older than you. Thank you. Oh, you know what's scary? We're here to talk about Meteor. I'm not stomping on your point here about mortality. Your momente mori, am I?
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, we're talking about Meteor, and first of all, I intensely dislike this movie. I had a traumatic experience seeing this back in 1979 at the Lowe's Astor Plaza in New York City. Now, this is the best conditions, best circumstances under which to see this movie, I think. That was a great theater for seeing these big spectacle films, but I just felt oppressed by this movie. And I was thinking about it earlier in the week. It reminded me of how I felt when I saw Gray Lady Down, which was out the year before. It was a submarine disaster movie with Charlton Heston and David Carradine, Stacy Keach, and it was Christopher Reeve's first major film. And it was the same kind of feeling, that claustrophobic, I want this movie to end.
I honestly can say, Ross, I did not see that movie, but the fact that it impacted you in the same way, that's kind of scary.
Well, the reason I mention it is to tie in with your comment about mortality. I'm looking at when Gray Lady Down was out, and I see Charlton Heston was basically a year older than we'll be, a couple months older than we'll be in July when he made that movie. It's like, wait a minute, Charlton Heston?
I know it doesn't make any sense. I mean, both you and I are going to be 34 next month, right? So
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
How can that be?
As you can see, yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, I don't. 54 just doesn't seem right. I think. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Real quick, I just want to say a few shout outs. I want to say hi to Warren out there. Hey, Warren, thanks for joining us. I want to say hi to John. Thank you for joining us. I'm actually having some technical issues with the computer. It's saying it's failing to load, but thankfully with my iPhone, I can see that we have people that are watching. Vince, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. I'm going to try to respond to the comments as they're coming in, but I may have to be doing some back and forth, and just bear with me in regards to that because it's going to be a little bit of a process. I also want to say hi to Sue, Francine, thanks for joining us and being on, and Martin, welcome as well too. So it's good seeing everybody out there. And yeah, I guess we should get started and start talking about Meteor. In fact,
that's why people are here. They're here to hear us talk about the Meteor.
And before we start talking, I guess what I'll do is I'll share the screen, and here is actually the movie poster from Meteor back in 1979. And it's interesting, Ross. I remember when this movie came out. I mean, I was 13 years old. You were 13 years old, and one of the things I was excited about was, at that time of movies coming out, sci-fi. I mean, Star Trek had only been off, and all roads lead back to Star Trek, folks. So there's my first Star Trek reference for the night. I figured I'd get it out right away. But Star Trek had been off the air for about 10 years, and Star Trek the Motion Picture was an anticipated movie that was going to be coming out. There was a lot of science fiction films that were out. We talked about The Black Hole last week. Star Trek the Motion Picture was going to be premiering. I believe it's December 6th, 1979. Maybe it was either the 6th or the 7th. I think maybe it was the special release date was the 6th, and then the 7th was that Friday when everybody got to see it. But anyway, there were a lot of sci-fi films, and this one, Meteor, when it was coming out, I remember seeing the ads. I remember going to the Budco in Easton, the 25th Street Shopping Center, for people that are watching the show that are local. Ross, you live right directly behind the Budco in that apartment complex.
For a time I did. That's right. Well, we met at the movies there several times. Yeah.
So it was kind of like, it was a go-to place when you weren't going to the Easton Eric. And with this movie, I mean, the cast was going to be incredible. I mean, you had Sean Connery, who literally had been James Bond 8 years earlier. From the last time he was in the movie was the James Bond movie was Diamonds Are Forever. That came out in 1971. You had Natalie Wood, who, I mean, again, I was 13 years old, but she was, very beautiful, gorgeous. And she was also, I remember her from Miracle on 34th Street when she was a kid, but she also had done West Side Story. She was a prominent actress. She had been married to Robert Wagner previously. If I remember correctly, they had been married, they had a child together, then they were divorced, and then they wound up getting back together. You had Karl Malden, who was known for The Streets of San Francisco back in the day. I mean, also he was an Academy Award-winning actor as well. But in the 70s, he did The Streets of San Francisco with Michael Douglas, who went on to be a famous movie star. You had Brian Keith, who had done a lot of different things. And also I remember him growing up from Family Affair. And then you had Martin Landau from Space 1999. And, Space 1999 had only been off the air literally maybe 3 years. Trevor Howard, another fine and distinguished actor. And then to top it off, as the president of the United States, you had Henry Fonda. So the cast in this movie, it was incredible. They were all there. I mean, it was looking to be really good.
And what happened? Yeah, I don't even know where to start with this movie. It's funny because remember when you asked me to do the show, I said, oh, we should do Zardoz. And you're like, oh, no, this is a bad Sean Connery thing. So what do you give me? You give me Meteor. At the other end of the decade, we have an even worse movie with Sean Connery. But Connery had come off of like a whole string of really entertaining movies. He made some great movies in the 1970s. He did Man Who Would Be King. He did The Wind and the Lion, also with Brian Keith. He did Great Train Robbery right before this, which is a great fun movie. And then they came out with Meteor, and I don't know who wrote in the. It was like they kind of ladled on moments of just they sprinkled it with profanity like fairy dust. It didn't quite even meld with the dialogue. I think Sean Connery must have come up with his own profanity for the film. It was so bad. It didn't really fit at all. You had the special effects, of course, which were made for what, $5 or something? Because we already had Star Wars, we had Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 2 years before, and then we have this, where it's basically a couple of model kits, that they used for, and evidently so. You could really tell that they were models in this movie, and the really bad matte work and composite shots. It was not up to snuff. I mean, you summed it up, Ross. It was a movie that, they had the cast, they had sort of the plot, and it was a disaster movie. It was a disaster movies of the 1970s were rich. I mean, we had talked about this last week. I mean, we had Earthquake in Sense Around. You also had, Poseidon Adventure, where you're out at sea. You also had The Towering Inferno.
I mean, those movies were like, I think if I remember correctly, it was like 72, 73, 74. I mean, they were coming out in sync. So as the 70s progressed, I mean, those movies, it really put Irwin Allen back on the map after doing, his television shows. He had the 4 shows in the 60s, when you had Lost in Space, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Time Tunnel, and Land of the Giants. And then he got into the movies, and that was a success. So for this movie to be almost like a disaster in space, it seemed the way to go. You had a great cast that was going to, take care of it as far as, bringing it to life on the silver screen. But unfortunately, the special effects were not so there, and also the script and the dialogue were lacking, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and it wasn't Irwin Allen. The Meteor.
And it wasn't.
As soon as you see it's like a presentation of Samuel Z. Arkoff, you know immediately. American International Pictures. It's like, oh boy, here we go. It's all the Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies, or the Beach Party movies, and then you have Meteor.
Right. Their
prestige picture. Where do you start with Meteor?
Well, I mean, Sean Connery, we can start from the beginning. I mean, Sean Connery is obviously, he's retired. He was a scientist that worked for NASA. They came up with this project of having these missiles put into space for protecting the Earth. It was almost like an orbiting platform that was established in order to protect the Earth from a disaster that could potentially happen. However, not to get political, the government took hold of this project, and they used it for political means, and were essentially turning the direction of the missile to be inward to the Earth, possibly towards other countries that they felt were not friendly with the United States. So it was being used as a sort of a protection for the US. But then what happened was it kind of went into a different direction, where it was being used for protection, not for outer space phenomena, but for internal phenomena on the Earth. And that's where he's recruited to come back, because he knows so much about the project, and they need his knowledge in order to utilize it for this threat that they find out is coming our way.
Right. It's a standard, you bring the reluctant hero back out of retirement. And so Connery comes back, and as I say, he's just very surly this whole movie, and he comes up with these witty zingers that usually are profane, but they're not that funny.
He actually looked like he was just like, it was almost the way, it's funny watching this. It's almost like he was just like annoyed by the whole thing, and it just like came through on the project. Although I did like the interactions between him and Carl. I mean,
Carl
really,
Malden.
Carl Malden. I mean, Carl Malden really stood up to him, and so did Sean Connery. But they really did have that actors' chemistry where they worked very well off of each other, I felt.
Yeah.
And it was almost like they understood each other, but not only with their characters, but the whole dynamics of this film, so to speak.
We could probably get rid of the poster now so I could see you.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good idea.
But Carl Malden's one of those actors. There you go. Carl Malden's one of those actors where, you could give him a menu and he'd be able to sell it. Some of those lines, were so, this meteor's 5 miles across and it's gonna hit us. Like, okay, sell it, Carl. Some of the most ludicrous lines, but he was the only one of the whole cast, I think, that really, it sounded like it was internalized, and he could actually spout these things and have them not sound totally ludicrous.
Exactly. And there's some comments that are coming in, and I'm just looking down here. I just wanted to say hi to some people that are joining us. Hi, Liz. Thanks for joining us. And also, Scott, thanks for joining us. John is saying the fake-looking ships crashed into a rock hanging by wires. Yeah. Francine, how you doing out there? Thanks for joining us. And also, Sue is also joining us. She says, I like Brian Keith's performance. What did other people think? I mean, Brian Keith just seemed very jovial and just like he was just there. He was, enjoying his Russian, and he was just along for the ride. It was like he really didn't take the movie very seriously, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, he's probably one of the only actors who enjoyed working on it. Just from his performance, I'm just saying, I don't know anything about behind the scenes. Right. But he genuinely seemed like he was enjoying himself. He actually speaks Russian, or spoke Russian. Did you know that he was a fluent Russian speaker?
I did not know that, but I did know that Natalie Wood was Russian, and
Yes.
also, she spoke, she had Russian descent, and she was speaking fluent Russian as well during the picture, which was
Yeah,
really
I don't know
cool.
why Brian Keith though, because there's not a Russian bone in Brian Keith's body, as far as I know.
No, I wouldn't have guessed that
But,
either.
yeah, and they called him kind of at the last minute. It was supposed to be Donald Pleasance playing the Russian, which would have been a totally different film,
Definitely. I mean,
because Donald Pleasance is never jovial.
no, he would not have been in that type
It
of
would have been
character.
just weird,
I mean, when I think of Donald Pleasance, I immediately think of the Halloween movies.
Yeah, or Fantastic Voyage or something. There's always something wrong with Donald Pleasance. He's always a little off. Good actor, but he plays a little off.
Yeah, definitely. So it definitely would have been. It would have definitely brought a different dynamic to the movie, which would have been interesting in its own right.
Yeah, Brian Keith was in The Wind and the Lion with Sean Connery a couple of years earlier, but they didn't play any scenes together. They filmed them apart. It was kind of like the Kirk Khan thing, where in Star Trek 2, where the two actors never met. But he played Teddy Roosevelt in The Wind and the Lion, so he was very, very convincing in that role. But it was unusual to see him as a Russian in this. But I liked him in the movie. He was one of the few actors I think really enjoyed it, who was really present for the film. Like a lot of them were a little glazed, like Trevor Howard, on the he did all his acting on a TV screen, basically, that they were constantly communicating through the command center there underneath the AT&T building in New York. Is that a great place for, if you're going to have a top secret government project, the first thing you want to do is put it in New York City, which is going to be ground zero. If there's ever an international crisis, New York City is going to be like ground zero, Unfortunately, we found that to be the case, but
yeah. And that was the other thing. Watching this movie and actually seeing the Twin Towers again, I mean, that brought back a lot of memories.
Well,
and it was, and to your point, I mean, with New York City, with the movie being essentially, set there, it just kind of, it kind of hit home with that as well.
Well, yeah, and I think the towers are the first thing to go when the meteor fragment hits New York City again. Yeah, so it's kind of eerie. Fortunately, the effects were not realistic enough to really cause any post-traumatic kind of feeling. I mean, it was just so bad. It was worse than I don't know, like some of those 50s movies. At least they had a kind of a charm to them. It reminded me a little bit of When Worlds Collide.
Right.
Although not quite the same, because the space arc and everything in that one.
You're talking about George Pal's One World's Collide, right? Yeah.
Where the Earth's going to be destroyed because the worlds are going to collide. Yeah.
Right. Rob Barnes is commenting. Rob's saying there's a comet that's going to collide with the asteroid belt. Let's send a slow-moving man capsule in for a real close look. Yeah.
Then everybody goes like this. Ah!
It wasn't the brightest thing for them to do. I mean, and then they were trying to bring Sean Connery's character up to speed as they're going through it and everything. And as they're doing it, they're doing these flashback sequences. And then, of course, they're going through that whole thing, how Joseph Campanelli's, son died and the team that were on that ship. And he just looks like mortified. And it was just an awkward scene. I don't know. The way they went about actually shooting that, again, I was not a fan.
No. And it's like I was thinking while watching the movie, what could they have done to make this movie better? You know what I mean? Well, basically anything. But I mean, so much went wrong. They had so much talent involved. Ronald Neame, the director, he directed the Poseidon Adventure, but he goes all the way back. He worked with Alfred Hitchcock in 1929. He did a film called Blackmail, and he was the cinematographer on that film. He worked with David Lean in some of his early films. In fact, did you hear the name of Sean Connery's yacht in the movie? It was the Blythe Spirit.
No, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that was the name of, or maybe it was just on the side of the yacht, anyway, it was the Blythe Spirit. But Ronald Neame acted as the cinematographer on David Lean's film version of Blythe Spirit, all the way back in the early 40s, I guess it probably was, based on the Noel Coward play.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and he worked with with the other team. Pal Pressburger, I said that already. And then when he started directing, he did a lot of good movies. He did Prime of Miss Jean Brodie with Maggie Smith, won an Oscar for it. He did he did the Poseidon Adventure, the Odessa File, the Frederick Forsyth thriller with John Voight and Maximilian Schell again.
Oh, there you go.
And he did a couple of Walter Matthau movies later in his career too. Hopscotch and it was a spy movie, and what was the 12 Days in October, I guess it was.
So he really has the credentials, and he has the resume and everything, for what he had done in the past. Again, it's just a faulty script.
Everything he did was half decent. It was from half decent to excellent. And this is the nadir of everybody involved. I think this is probably the worst thing any of them touched.
Yeah,
things just didn't come together on Meteor, and the screenwriters. The one of the screenwriters won the best screenplay for Patton.
Oh, geez, I didn't even know about that, Ross.
Yeah,
wow.
For Patton and Day the Earth Stood Still, and here we are with Meteor. And it was a $22 budget, which was not an inconsiderable budget back then. You remember,
not at all.
If a movie is $20 million, that was like, whoa, that's a big budget movie.
And believe it or not, the movie actually was nominated for an Academy Award for sound.
Right, but lost to Apocalypse Now, understandably.
Yep.
Yeah,
but it did receive the nomination. Going to the next thing, which I wanted to show our viewers on here. And we always do a tribute to STARLOG magazine. So we definitely have to come back to that. And back in the day, STARLOG number 29.
All roads lead to STARLOG.
Yeah, right.
I read all of those. Yeah.
Yeah. The earlier STARLOGs were the good ones back in the day.
I like the story at the bottom there, the incredible shrinking Mork. That intrigues me. Take me back to the 70s.
It's got to be Mork from Mork, right?
Definitely.
Hey, Captain Phil's in the house. Captain Phil, thanks for joining us. Great to see you there. Deborah, thanks for joining us. I see that you're out there as well, too. And then we were talking about All Roads Lead to Star Trek. It's really funny. When I watched this film, I immediately thought, wow, look who's in this. And then I forgot. And then I'm trying to pick my brain, trying to think about, who that could be. And sure enough, here is the Star Trek connection. And again, I penned this phrase from Mary Beth. So thank you, Mary Beth, from that. But even in Meteor, All Roads Lead to Star Trek with actress Bibi Besh, who is best known as Carol Marcus from the 1982 film Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And she actually was in this film. She played Sean Connery's ex-wife. She had a bit part. And
in one scene,
yeah. But
because it was the 70s. It was the 70s, so we had to work in a scene about divorce. It had nothing to do with the movie, but
no. And he was really abrupt with her too. He's like, he's trying to talk and she's saying, are you right? And then he's just all like disgruntled. And he's like, tell the kids I love them, and then click.
Yeah, that provided a little background. So we get close to his character.
Yeah. So we just kind of knew where he was coming from. Hey, Marianne, I just want to say hi. I see that you're out there. Thanks for joining us. And then the other thing I just have to mention, we're doing All Roads Lead to Star Trek. All roads do lead to Space 1999 too.
Oh man.
And then there's Martin Landau. Martin Landau, Martin Landau, I was very excited about as a kid, and I'm reflecting back when I was 13 years old because loved him as Commander Koenig. Here he's in a movie that, is right after. We get to see him. And in this film, Martin Landau is so underutilized. When you do see him in a couple of the scenes that he's in the beginning, all he's doing is he's screaming like a maniac because he's this general that has been had this project taken away from him by Sean Connery's character that's coming in, because Martin Landau's character, this general, feels that, it's almost like, the Russians are going to attack us. You're going to regret this. And he's just like so full of anger and portraying it. And I think I can't help but thinking that he was tapping into his anger of doing this character in this script,
That could very well be, because as you say, he was so underutilized, yet he was so over the top. And I can't believe that anybody who spent his entire career in the military like that and attain that position would not have the discipline to kind of suck it up in some of those scenes where he just went totally ballistic, just so Sean Connery could call him, tell this asshole. It's like, oh, Sean. Poor Martin Landau, though. This had to be the lowest point of his career because he had gone from Mission Impossible to Space 1999, and then there was that big trough until he got to kind of like that Tucker.
Yeah, I mean,
Crimes and Misdemeanors, and
I agree. This was the start, and I'm totally with you about that, Ross. I mean, with that, then I think there was a 1980 movie that he came out, and I think it was called Being, and he plays a character called the Sarge, and he's kind of like this sergeant or this guy that's kind of like delusional, and it's almost like, he's washed up, and he's talking about these alien critters that are coming out here. And I realize, folks, we're digressing and we're getting away from Meteor, but just bear with me for a moment. And he's in this part, and Jack Palance was actually in this movie too, and definitely check it out at some point. But it was, I remember seeing it and thinking I was excited because Martin Landau was in it, and then when I saw it, I was just like, ugh. But then I see that Phil's jumping in, that in 1981, I believe it was, we hit the ultimate low when he did with Barbara Bain. They did Gilligan's Island and the Harlem Globetrotters.
Oh, no.
But I have to admit, it was great to see them on it because it was like I was such fans and, strong fans of them, and it was really good. But it was just like, oh my God, it's like they are so underutilized. But it was almost, he was playing this evil. He actually was like this seaman that wore this ship's captain's hat, and he was doing this like really bad accent, and he was just like this mad scientist type of guy. And in fact, when he does one of his laughs from it reminded me of the laugh he was doing in the Space 1999 episode Seeds of Destruction, where he's dealing with his like a mirror image of himself, and that was evil. And he's like trapped in this cave, and it was the Calthons. But anyway, he did that laugh in that movie, and it so resonated with me with that. But then it was so great to see him, be utilized and redeem himself, like he said, when Tucker, A Man in His Dream, came out with Jeff Bridges in 1988, and he was nominated for an Academy Award. It was really, that was like, and it was like Martin is back.
Yeah, and then he did Crimes and Misdemeanors, which I think was the next year, and he got nominated again.
Right, Woody Allen,
right?
Woody Allen, yeah.
And then just a few years later, he got it with Ed Wood.
Ed Wood, which was incredible.
Bela Lugosi, yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Hey,
I just want to say hi. A quick shout out. I want to say hi to Linda. Linda, thanks for joining us. I'm seeing that you're out there. Great to see you out there. Also, Matt Anthony's on. He's watching. Ross, Matt's out there. And Mary Beth said you did a really good impersonation of Sean Connery. That was a good impersonation. All
you have to do is swear and slur your S's.
We always used to make fun and say, "Shut down."
Exactly.
But anyway, so that's really good stuff.
So what's going on with now I don't want to get too intimate with this, but what's going on with Martin Landau's hair in this movie? Now, was he balding in real life, or did he have? Oh, he was. So that's his real hair. Because I know Connery, they gave him a hairpiece for this movie, because which doesn't make any sense, because he's already proudly displayed himself to get away from James Bond. He's already, in several movies. He's like, I think Murder on the Orient Express. I think in everything he's had the
and Zordak. Was that what, am I pronouncing that right?
Zardoz? Yeah. Well, they gave him like a wig, like a ponytail wig on that thing. But with Martin Landau, I think you're right though. This is the first time I think we actually get to see him, because in Space 1999 he was wearing a hairpiece, and the first season, and the second season he was really wearing one which was really bad. But in this was like the first time you get to see him, and he actually, somebody had commented, he really doesn't have like short hair for a general, but it's not as long as it was in the second season of 1999 though. But yeah, it's good observation 70s. On that. Yeah, but it looked like they just shaved Landau's head and put all the hair on Connery. I wasn't sure what happened there, but okay, so that's the secret with Landau's hair.
Yeah.
Now, did you notice with some of the other actors? Did you see that Sybil Danning was in it? Sybil Danning.
Yes, she was. Yeah. And it's funny. Warren was commenting earlier about that. back, and I'm jumping around here, but it was funny because in the 1980s, what happened was Space 1999 was virtually gone. You couldn't find it anywhere. And what happened was they did a compilation of these episodes, and it was 2 episodes that were compiled together, and they did it 4 different times. They did it with the Metamorph, the Cosmic Princess, which they called the Cosmic Princess. They did Metamorph and Space Warp. They did Breakaway with War Games. They called it Alien Attack. But anyway, Sybil Danning did this like promo that was at the very beginning of this compilation for each one. It was at the beginning and at the end, and it was just so bad because she's in this like skin tight suit. She's got this, you know, what looks like it'd be like a laser rifle that she probably got out of a Toy Bee store, you know, and she's just holding it there, and she's like, you know, trying to appeal to the science fiction nerds as they are, you know, us. And, you know, she's just like looking there in this like skimpy outfit, and it's talking about stuff that she has no clue what she's talking about. And then she was in this movie.
Well, you know, she's in a lot of cult, you know, B movies, you know, both in Germany and the United States. Well, she was in Battle Beyond the Stars, which is one of her more visible roles.
Yeah, she's an Austrian actress, I believe, too.
Yeah. So I guess maybe she was in, I'm not sure if it was Germany or Austria where she was making the foreign movies, but she's made some pretty, you know, bad movies over there. But I guess what they were aiming for with Meteor was to make this a big international production. Right. You know, and I guess they wanted to have an international audience. So they have Sybil Danning, who's in the movie for 2 seconds, you know, for the Austrian sequence, with the skiers at the ski lodge. Because what happens if you haven't seen this movie, you know, spoiler alert, the meteor fragments. Oh no, well, I mean, there are kind of offshoots of this thing. So there is raining down into the atmosphere and causing all sorts of subsidiary disasters, if you will. And one of them is an avalanche in the Alps, the Swiss Alps. And so she's there as a you know, a snow bunny, basically.
Well, and the interesting thing about that too, Ross, they actually took that avalanche from another movie. They actually
called Avalanche.
Called Avalanche. So they actually used
it was out the year before.
Yes, they used the footage from that movie and they stuck it into this. So yeah.
All roads lead to Robert Forster. Robert Forster was an Avalanche with Rock Hudson, I think.
Oh geez.
And Mia Farrow. Mia Farrow was another one.
Mia Farrow, wow. Yeah.
So apparently, so what do they think? People didn't remember that this movie was out the year before, so they took the scene and they kind of spliced it into Meteor. And,
exactly.
And one of my favorites is where they had. You remember that scene where they had all the skiers that had convened for this big cross country race?
Yes.
And basically, they said these 12,000 skiers that you're witnessing all died in the avalanche. You know, fortunately, our camera crew got out of here right before the avalanche hit, but everybody you see here is now dead. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess they had no budget. Oh, how horrible! They killed all these people, and we didn't see it.
Yeah, it was kind of morbid.
It was morbid, but it also a cheap way to ratchet up the body count. I think, you know, they didn't want to film the special effects of having the avalanche, you know, wipe out the skiing event. Also, there was the Hong Kong sequence.
Yes,
with
and you know what?
Tsunami.
Right. And that actor that was actually in that scene too, and I apologize, I didn't look him up, but yeah, he had done a lot.
Yeah. What's his name here? He's well, it depends. He's listed several ways, but it's Young Henry Yu. He was in a lot of kung fu movies.
He did a lot of episodic TV. He did a lot of movies back in the 70s and the 80s. Yeah.
Well, so, Run Run Shaw was a co-producer of the film, and Run Run Shaw did all of those great Saturday afternoon kung fu movies. You ever watch those things?
Oh yeah.
Saturday afternoon. Oh yeah. So he produced all of those, and lived a very long life. I think he died in 2014. He was 106 when he died.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Ronald Neame was 99, the director. He died in 2010. They asked him when he's 95 years old. He gave an interview, and they asked him the secret of his longevity, and he said 2 vodkas for lunch and 3 scotches in the evening. He also commented that all his doctors that told him to cut out the alcohol and to live longer, they were all dead.
The secret, it was the holy grail of his youth.
So Run Run Shaw produced the Hong Kong and the so-called Siberian scene in there. So he was the guy who played the fellow who was in Siberia was also an international actor. He's probably best known for My Name is Bruce. You know, he did a couple of films like that. There were kung fu parodies that he made that were out in the 70s, and his name was Johnny Yoon. So we don't know, you know, they're there and gone, but they probably did that so that when they distributed the film overseas, you know, they could put all the international actors up there and people would know who they were. It was kind of an addition to Connery and Brian Keith and Carl Malden. They were bigger draws overseas, probably.
Absolutely. And I did read too that they did film this film in Hong Kong. So I mean, it was probably to appeal to those viewers there. So it was a smart way to go with that. It's just that unfortunately it didn't make it.
It didn't help. Yeah.
It really didn't. In fact, one of the things that which was really tragic, they kept focusing in on this young guy. He's trying to get to his apartment, and he finally gets to the apartment. And then, you know, he gets his girlfriend or his wife out, and, you know, and then they get their baby, and then they scoop her up, and then they're running outside, and then, you know, they're flashing to other scenes, they're running, and then the tsunami comes in, and then boom, they're dead. And it was just like, it was like, wow, you know, they were really making you think that there was going to be something with this character, or they were trying to build some kind of hope. And it was interesting that they actually just like wiped them out like that, because it was like almost like atypical of a movie in that period of time. I was just like, wow, they put so much emphasis and so much focus on them, and you almost like thought that something was going to happen, and then gone.
and like I said, though, he was a known action star in Hong Kong, that guy. And he was in for what, a minute.
Right. And that was, to your point, that's why they did it, because they just wanted to, you know, for the international audience, that was their, you know, their way of trying to rope them in. And, you know, he got maybe 2 minutes in the film if he was lucky.
Right. Another thing about Run Run Shaw, you know, if you're a fan of or if you've seen the Kill Bill movies, you know, at the beginning it says a Shaw Brothers production, or Run Run Shaw. You know, they kind of Tarantino kind of pays tribute to that. That's who Run Run Shaw is. Yeah, all those kung fu movies we enjoyed on Saturday afternoons in the 70s.
Exactly.
And 80s, yeah.
Oh, Phil's chiming in. He's saying, this is the last gasp of the disaster trend that started with Irwin Allen Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, and Earthquake. Yeah, we were saying that, Phil.
And then, Airport came in 1970, but yeah.
Yeah, Airport 1970, and it basically, folks, my first basically of the night. It gave George Kennedy a lot of work through 1970 to 1979.
Kept him employed. Right. He turned up in Earthquake. Yeah, he was steadily employed in the 70s.
It's funny too, Ross. It's not a sci-fi movie, but the 1979 movie that I remember seeing a lot of, and was on Prism. I talked about how my parents used to watch Prism back in the day. We used to watch that, but was Airport 79, and it dealt with the Concorde.
The Concorde. Well, see, I think that was the death blow. The fact that they had the Concorde, Airport 79, Hurricane, and then this one. They all came out within several months, and they all bombed horribly. So I think that's what kind of, everybody was kind of stunned. They said, okay, there's enough of these overturned ocean liners, enough of these Towerings Inferno, enough of these earthquakes until CGI.
It lasted a decade, but it ran its course. It
ran its course.
And it's interesting too, and I've said this in previous shows, to me, when you're watching, whether it be television or you're watching film, every movie or TV show has almost like a signature tone to it, where you can almost identify that, you know what, this was made in the 60s, this was made in the 70s, this is made in the 80s. I mean, I really stopped watching TV after the 1980s, and, you know, movies I've you know, continue to watch. And Vince, hey Vince, and I saw you out there. I think I gave you a shout out before. My another friend that I have, Vince Fodi, will always say to me, "Oh, you're catching up, Roy. You're up to like the 80s now," because I just really enjoyed watching stuff from the 60s, even a little bit of the 50s, but more the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. But it's just that when it gets past then, and not to say that there's not good stuff, there hasn't been stuff in the 90s and the 2000s, but I mean, it's crazy now. You know, 2000s was such a big deal. Now there's 2010. Now we're 2020. And that in itself is insane. So it's like, you know, the 60s literally is like 1960 was 60 years ago. It doesn't mean, I don't know. It's kind of crazy, but I digress.
You're blowing my mind, Roy.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to Michelle. Thanks for joining us, Michelle. Good to see you out there. Hope you're doing well. Marianne is commenting. She says, what was that movie with Jane Fonda about the meltdown of the reactor? That was the China Syndrome. And that was 1979, I think, too. And that was with Jack Lemmon, was it, Ross?
Yeah, and
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas, right? And you know what? The very it was eerie because that came out right during the 3 Mile Island
yes
meltdown.
Because 3 Mile Island was in March of '79. We're in, we I was in Phillips Lopakon, New Jersey. You were in Easton, PA, and that was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That was only about 100 miles down the road from us, west of us.
Yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking. But the very day that happened, I was at the State Theater watching Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, the motion picture.
Geez. Wow.
Yeah,
because it came out in March in '79. That's right. Did you?
Yeah.
Hey Ross, I'm jumping a little bit, but did you see that at the State Theater?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where actually I saw Battlestar Galactica when
I saw that there too, and Sense Around.
Yep.
One of only 4 movies in Sense Around.
Yeah, and this wasn't one of them. Meteor was not in Sense Around, folks.
It was not. No, it was numbing, but not in Sense Around.
Yeah.
In fact, the meteor itself. This is one of these things. It's not really a meteor, right? It's an asteroid until it hits the atmosphere, right?
Yes.
I mean, did we go through this with the black hole?
We did.
We have this discussion.
We're having deja vu.
We're having deja vu. Well, they call the what they call a meteor, but I'm going to say an asteroid. Its name was Orpheus.
Yes.
I think they should have called it Morpheus because I was asleep, well before it got to the. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the name of the asteroid was Orpheus. The size of the meteor chunk from what it was 5 miles in kilometers wide. The speed at which was hurtling towards the Earth was 30,000 miles, 48,280 kilometers per hour. The name of the nuclear missile platform satellite orbiting the Earth was Hercules.
Right, there you go. And as Carl Malden says, that meteor is 5 miles across and it's going to hit us.
Yeah, that was a good Carl Malden, by the way.
No. I wish I could do a Carl Malden. He was the best, best actor in the movie. Yeah.
At the end of the movie too, when they're signing off, and then he, it was kind of sad. You had to feel bad for Sean Connery because here, and we'll jump back. I'm jumping around a little bit, but when Natalie Wood is leaving and she's going on the plane, and he's like, maybe I'll visit it sometime. And then I think they gave him a baseball bat, and then it was from the Brooklyn Dodgers before the Dodgers were actually out in California.
Well, you knew the tie-in. I can't say it on. Well, I could say it because Nick Tate said it, but I'm not going to use Nick Tate's language. But I mean, it tied into the earlier cab driver salute. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't.
Earlier in the movies, basically, Brian Keith and his Russian accent. As the salute when he was drinking the vodka.
Yes.
It was something the Dodgers, something that would have pushed the PG rating for the movie.
Right, because they were looking
the Dodgers. So
they were talking about giving this an R-rated movie, making it an R rating.
Right, they appealed it though, and they got the PG rating for it. What was I going to say about the meteorite itself, though, or the asteroid?
Well, the construction of it. I mean, as far as special effects go, it could have definitely been a little bit better. And one of my gripes too is, with the missiles, with Hercules and everything. Unfortunately, they did look almost like a plastic model kit, which essentially is what it was.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that they didn't do a little bit more with the effects, because the budget for the special effects, they didn't have laser battles. They weren't having, people flying outside in spacesuits and things of that nature. And you didn't have, X-Wings and Y-Wings and, Cylon Raiders. I mean, it was just essentially photographic effects that I think that they could have taken to a better level, but unfortunately that they didn't.
Yeah, I think all of those things should have been in this movie, by the way. Yeah, what happened apparently is they contracted several companies to do the effects, and they weren't satisfied with the effects. And by the time they got to the last, effects artists, they just didn't have a budget to really do it. So they went with what they had, and that's what, despite the fact that they had a $22 million budget, that's what they wound up with. I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, okay, All right, so where's John Williams? You're thinking, okay, because he was the go-to disaster movie guy in the 70s. He did Poseidon Adventure, he did the Towering Inferno, he did Earthquake.
He was supposed to do this movie.
And then I found out, but he must have said, all right, I'm out of here. I've got to do 1941 for Spielberg. See ya. And then they were like, oh, well, you gotta go get, because they got Lawrence Rosenthal to do the music.
Yeah.
Okay? Now this guy's a guy who's known for Beckett and like Clash of the Titans. I think who they really wanted was Leonard Rosenmin, who did Fantastic Voyage. He did the first 12-tone film score for a film called The Cobweb back in the 1950s. And he has like a spikier, much eerier, very tense sound. I think he would have been a much better composer, but I think it's one of these things where they got like Igor from Young Frankenstein or Fritz from Frankenstein to go and get us a brain. And they send him, and he comes back with the abnormal brain. It was like, go and get us Leonard Rosenman. Oh, here he is. Oh, Leonard Rosenthal. Oh, well. So you had, what about the motif they had for the Meteor that anticipated Jerry Goldsmith's Klingon electric guitar?
Oh my God. You know what? I thought Jerry Goldsmith actually had done the music, because I picked up on that right away. And I'm like, and that's when I discovered that it wasn't Jerry Goldsmith and it was this Lawrence Rosenthal, because immediately when I heard that, I thought, this sounds like Jerry Goldsmith, because it was almost exactly the same.
Yeah, and then they had all those little chirpy electronic like Logan's Run kind of stuff that they would layer over the Meteor also. Mm-hmm. It was not as well done as Jerry Goldsmith would have done. not one of Leonard or Lawrence Rosenthal's finest hours, I don't think.
No.
Film score, but yeah, John Williams was actually supposed to do the music. Imagine that.
And again, we know how music can influence a movie. It definitely, I think, would have, if nothing else, it would have made it a little bit more intense.
Oh, the opening credits. How they tried to kind of evoke Superman.
Yep.
Did you get that?
I did get that.
With the words receding into space. The trailer is even more obviously lifted from that. If you go to YouTube after this and look up Earthquake 1979 trailer, you'll see they actually use the same kind of effect with the, but I don't know. Just seeing like Carl Malden just didn't do it for me. It wasn't quite I don't know. Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they're kind of similar, but
yeah, I would say definitely Gene Hackman and Carl Malden, definitely similar type of characters with that, definitely.
I could see Gene Hackman yelling those lines. He probably would have been smirking though when he did it.
Yeah, probably.
He was in Poseidon Adventure, so yeah.
John is chiming in, he's saying this is out there, but I thought the same guy did the music for Force 10 from Navarro. Sounds the same. Ross, any ideas on that?
I'm not sure, but it might be Ron Goodwin who did Force 10. I'm not sure. You'd have to double check that.
Okay.
I don't know though. Could be. Yeah. Oh yeah, because he kept coming up. Rosenthal would come up with these like cutesy little Russian themes for Brian Keith and that fanfare for the American missiles, and it just didn't do it for me. But,
yeah, it was almost trying to be patriotic in a certain sense, I think.
Well, I don't mind a little patriotism, but it just seemed like it was kind of like paint by numbers patriotism.
Yeah, it was forced. It was definitely it was forced overall.
Yeah.
And actually, as far as cameos, the director actually had a cameo in this movie too. He was a British representative. He was a diplomat.
Yeah. I couldn't see him in that scene, but he was in there supposedly.
So that was pretty interesting as well too. But.
Yeah. Well, what about the guy who played the Russian in those scenes? He seemed like the least Russian actor in the whole movie. He was supposed to be the Russian representative. I don't know if you remember him. I don't know who the actor was, but he was not really a convincing Russian.
No, he wasn't.
Less so than Brian Keith.
Oh, there was another actor that's in this movie. He's actually credited if you go through it too. And it's funny when we say all roads lead to Star Trek. Anybody know who this actor was and what episodes? He was actually in 2 classic Star Trek episodes, and his name actually in the movie is His name was Sam Mason, and he was actually tracking the meteor coming towards the Earth, and he was in the beginning scenes. But the actor that played him is Michael Zaslow, and he was actually in 2 classic Star Trek episodes. And for anybody out there, I'll give you a hint. It was a first season episode and it was a second season episode. So there is Where All Roads Lead to Trek, and actually it's in classic Trek, and I just remember that. And he also, I'll even give you another hint, was a soap opera actor. And I only remember this because my mom used to watch the soap opera back in the day. It was Guiding Light. And he played a character named Roger Thorpe, and he was like this despicable guy. I mean, he was a real dirtbag and sleaze, and everybody hated him. And he was one of those soap opera actors, I guess, that they killed him off, and then of course he came back to life, and then tormented people and everything. But anyway, he was in 2 classic Star Trek episodes, and I'm curious to see if anybody out there knows who that is.
You're not talking about the guy.
What's that?
What was the actor's name again? Or
it's Michael Zaslow.
Okay.
And it was funny when I started watching this, because I had not seen this movie. It had been it's been almost like 40 years, a little over 40 years. And then I watched it a couple nights ago when we were talking about doing it. And when I saw him on the screen, I was like, oh my goodness, look who it is. Martin is saying The Savage Curtain. No, that's not it. Rob Barnes is saying, always felt bad for the actors during the mud scene.
Yeah, they used some kind of clay. There was some kind of clay they were pumping out of this wall. Now, if the East River were behind those walls, do you think that they would have, the little crack with the little? No, that whole thing would have just come in.
That would have been done.
River.
Yeah, that was pretty awful.
But at least there was some action. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But and even that looked like almost model effects too. It was really chintzy. Warren is saying, wait. Was he DeSalle? No, he was not DeSalle. Good guess, Warren. Good guess, but it was not DeSalle. That DeSalle was actually, the actor's name is Richard Barrier. And he was actually in 3 classic Star Trek episodes. He was in Cat's Paw, which was the second season episode. And then he was also in This Side of Paradise. And he was also in The Squire of Gothas. Everybody's still guessing. I'll give it away just because we don't want to go over too much on time. He was actually in the first Star Trek episode that was actually ever shown on broadcast television on September 8th, 1966 in the United States. If I remember correctly, it premiered earlier in Canada. And he was with the landing party when they originally beamed down. He was with Kirk McCoy, and he was the red shirt that was in a blue shirt. So that's who he was in that. And then he was also in the episode I'm Mud. He was an auxiliary control when the android Norman went and was taking over the ship. And then the security guard finds him and he says Ensign Jordan was knocked out. He was trying to stop him from being in there. So those were the 2 times he was in it. So it was a first season and a second season episode. So for all you Trekkers out there, because all roads do lead back to Star Trek.
Ronald Neame, the director, Roy, he there's another connection to his early days. I told you he worked with David Lean and with Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
Trevor Howard was in the scene where they just basically, every time he came on, they have him on that TV screen. And I love, by the way, how they have no early detection system. It's like, oh, we just spotted another large fragment. It's entered the atmosphere and it's heading for the eastern seaboard, roughly where you are or whatever. Oh, how long do we have? Well, it's basically already there. It's like no notice. But anyway, Trevor Howard, I'm thinking, how's that? Well, he's not really doing anything at this point. I mean, he was in big movies like Mutiny on the Bounty back in the 1950s, Marlon Brando. I mean, he worked consistently. He was in Superman, at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. Yes.
But he worked consistently. But going back to the 1940s, 1945, I think it was, early 40s, maybe early to mid 40s, he did a film called Brief Encounter, which is a big classic love story with Celia Johnson. It's kind of it's a weepy, a tearjerker.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things where once you see it, you never forget it. And it was kind of it made Trevor Howard a superstar. But Ronald Neame was actually the photographer on that movie. He was a cinematographer. He was an uncredited screenwriter who worked on it. It's actually Noel Coward who wrote it, I guess. But he also did some work on that as a screenwriter, and he produced it. So he was calling in a favor basically back from 1945, saying, "Hey, we're doing Meteor in 1979." And I know a little time has passed, Trevor, but could you come and do this scene, please? But that's why Trevor Howard did it instead of Alec Guinness, or they asked Alec Guinness and Richard Mills. They were.
But did Trevor Howard work with Alec Guinness too on?
In the past, he probably did. I'm not.
Yeah.
I know Ronald Neame worked with Alec Guinness. He did a couple.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. That's probably what I'm thinking of.
He did a couple of those Ealing studio comedies back in the 50s, The Horse's Mouth, and a film called The Card, which has a different name in America. I can't remember what it is, but.
So there's a lot of film history between those guys, and imagine calling in a favor like 34 years later. That Ross, you know what that reminds me of, Ross? It's like me reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, Ross, I haven't talked to you in like almost 34. I haven't seen you in like 34 years. How would you like to be on my show?"
My head just exploded because it truly has been 35 years. I am the new Trevor Howard. Oh my goodness! I'll be on Battlestar Galactica next. We're on the council at Krypton.
Oh, come on, you'd rather do this. Oh, shoot. How the hell is 1986 34 years? My God. You know, Ross, the last time I think I saw you, I think I remember it was at the Palmer Park Mall. I think that was the last time. It just blows my mind.
Could very well be, yeah.
Yeah, 34 years, and nothing's changed, Ross.
Nothing, least of all, Meteor. Yeah, I can't believe 41 years. And somebody commented on my Facebook page. They said something like, "Oh, I try to." Well, one of your followers, he says, "I try to watch this movie every once in a while to see like how not to make a movie because everything's so totally wrong with it." And I'm thinking, why would you do that to yourself? I saw it 41 years ago. I'm hoping I'm going to be dead in 41 years, so I don't have to watch it again. I'll be in my 90s then, and somebody will show me Meteor. I'll be like Mark Twain. I'll ride in on the comet and then leave on the comet.
I know, right? It happened when he was born, and it happened when he died.
Yeah, it's going to be the same with me with Meteor. Yeah.
Oh shoot. Linda's saying we know we are old when 1986 was seems like yesterday. So true, Linda. So true. Matt Anthony saying, "Peace begets peace, and love begets love. Run, it's the Cylons." Oh boy. Mark Anthony, hey Mark, he's saying popular in the 70s to have aging stars in disaster flicks. Now you're right, Mark. Absolutely.
I know.
True.
Before Love Boat.
Before the Love Boat. Hey, Dave Lafredo's on. He's just joined us. Hey, Dave, thanks for joining us. Glad to see that you're out there. Curious what your thoughts are on the 1979 movie Meteor. Yeah, this has been a fun trip down memory lane. But well, let's see, Ross. We've talked about 3 different movies. So Star Crash, we've done Black Hole, and now Meteor. Which one's your least favorite?
Well, that's easy. Of course, Meteor. Yeah. Yeah, that one's at the bottom of the barrel. Black Hole is like Citizen Kane next to Meteor. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's true. And Star Crash is just a fun movie. I mean, come on, they had on the model. I mean, on the ship at the beginning, the Imperial ship at the very beginning. I mean, you had the eagle nose cone that's implanted as part of it. You can't go wrong with that. I mean, any movie that does that. I mean, you know, come on.
They had you 2 minutes into that movie. Yeah. Yeah. So disaster movies. There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Meteor destroying bringing to bringing the decade to a blazing end.
Yeah. And it's really sad too because only a couple of years later, and in fact, you mentioned Time Bandits earlier on. I remember seeing Time Bandits at the movie theater, actually at the Budco, and I saw it with Joe and
I saw it there too.
And a couple other people. Joe, you know, your cousin Joe. And when I got home, I heard the news that Natalie Wood had passed, and it was like November of I think 81, and she was only like 43 years old. So yeah. it's crazy, yeah. But yeah, Sean Connery did a lot of stuff after that, and you know he came back as Bond in 1983. So
Sean
never
Connery
say never.
He was in Time Bandits.
And he was in Time Bandits, exactly.
Agamemnon, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie since it was out, but I remember. Yeah.
Oh boy, all good stuff. So I'm just curious out there. We're going to be wrapping up shortly. Just want to check any comments from anybody. Final comments about Meteor, things that you remembered about it. Dave Lafredo is saying Zardox.
Oh, I would love to do Zardoz. Oh, please, please. It's not 1979, but
yeah, I think we'll actually have to come back and do that, Ross. I think that'll be fun. John Haig saying didn't get to see Time Bandits till it was on the movie channel. Yeah, that's a movie that definitely was a fun movie. And again, that was 81, I think, right? I'm saying, yeah, it was 81.
Like yeah.
But
yeah,
just looking to see if there's any final comments, any more opinions on this film. If not, we'll start to wrap it up. I appreciate you coming on, Ross. It's always a pleasure. And I think we will have to revisit, and we'll actually have to do that Sean Connery movie. And that came out in what, 73, 74?
Probably about 74 or something. Yeah. Yeah. We can take a little break if you want before we get to that. If you need to build up you think you have to build up your strength to handle that one. But yeah, I'm up for it. That'll give everybody a chance to watch the movie before we do it.
Yeah, there you go.
Everybody check out Zardoz.
Dave Lafredo is saying that was Sean Connery's finest role. and here I thought it was 1960. What was it? 1963 when he did From Russia with Love. That was like my favorite James Bond movie from the Sean Connery series. But I guess he waited 10 years to do Zardoz to really get his stride and really hit his mark. So I might need to be corrected on that, Dave.
Yeah, shake the Bond image. Well, I think we should come back and we'll do the show in the bandoliers and the mankini with the ponytail.
Oh, there you go.
That'd be great.
The way things are going, it just might happen. And Linda is really enjoying us. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate your positive comments. Well, I'm going to start to wrap things up. We're going to go on to the next phase. Let me just switch things over here a little bit. I actually had some internet problems tonight, folks. I apologize. I kept looking down at my iPhone. I was trying to make sure I was seeing your comments coming through. There was technical difficulties, but you know what? That is the beauty of doing live broadcasting, right, Ross? I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, it's, the possibilities. I mean, we have, clear weather the entire day. And of course, what's lurking out there is a thunderstorm. And I see, blue skies yonder, and I see this dark cloud that's like hovering over by my house, and I'm waiting for the lightning to hit the pole and then for the internet to go out, and then I'd have to broadcast on my iPhone as I did in the past. But we actually did get through it, so we were safe.
Makes you feel alive, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. So anyway, what I'm going to do is go to the section of our broadcast where we do shout outs to everybody. So whoops, and I'm actually having a problem here. Wait a minute. Let me see. I'm going to make sure I didn't lose anybody. Hang on. My computer is looks like it wants to go off. So like I was just saying about live broadcast, folks, I actually spoke too soon there. So Ross, can you see the screen right now?
I can.
Okay. So
Sci-Fi Distilled. Yes.
Excellent. All righty. So give some shout outs to everybody. I just want to let you know what's coming up. First, I want to give a shout out to Sci-Fi Distilled Wednesday nights, coming this June 24th, which will be this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Mike and Mary Beth will be doing are the hosts, and they'll be joined by their special guest host, who is going to be Kent Schmidt. Sorry, Ken. And they're going to be doing a special edition, which is called a Make Me Watch episode. And I have to laugh because this came about. Mary Beth was kind enough to actually be on a couple weeks ago. I essentially called her up. I was going to actually have somebody co-host with me. And it was kind of last minute. It didn't work out. And I was like, Mary Beth, have you ever seen Moonraker? And she's like, no. And Mary Beth was a trooper. And what she did was she actually watched the movie the day before. And she, digested it. She, went over the notes and everything about it. And she was a superstar on the show. And I appreciate you being on, Mary Beth. I think it was a really fun show. And we'll never forget the blinking pigeon from James Bond Moonraker. But anyway, it was kind of an addition where you never watch something and then you're kind of going to watch it. So what they're going to be doing on Sci-Fi Distilled is it's going to be the make me watch episode, and what they're going to be, Mary Beth has never seen and is going to be watching, is Army of Darkness, a 1992 movie. And they're going to be talking about that this coming Wednesday night, and that's June 24th, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So definitely check it out. And then also coming on Wednesday, July 1st, they're going to have Star Trek Behind the Scenes. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Their special guest hosts are going to be Denise and Michael Akuda, and also Doug Drexler. The three of them are awesome. They've been up to the Star Trek set tour, and they are really great people. They are so entangled with Star Trek, the world and the universe of Star Trek. So I am very psyched and very looking forward to seeing this. So you definitely want to check these two things out that are going to be coming down the pike. So just be aware of it, folks. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to a theater that's very special to my heart, which is the Country Gate Theater, which is in Belvedere, New Jersey. As we all know, theaters across the country and probably even the world have been dealing with having to shut down because of everything that's going on with the COVID situation. And it's really been hard for theaters, especially community theater groups, in order to stay afloat. So please visit Country Gate's website, which is www.countrygate.org. They are going to be having some things coming down the pike, which is going to be online and virtual. So you'll be able to check that out. So please just, stay tuned for that. And again, Bill, Gina, and Marissa will definitely appreciate that. And like I said, stay tuned. Also, Space 1999 fans, Jerry Anderson fans, Destination Moonbase Alpha, a Jerry Anderson event, is going to be happening in 2021. This is going to be taking place at the Park Inn by Radisson Heathrow Airport in London, England. And it's going to be a huge convention. And it's going to be the next big Space 1999 Jerry Anderson event that's going to be taking place. It will be between the dates of September 9th and 13th, which is, of course, Breakaway Week. And that's going to be 2021, Breakaway Day, the 13th of September. Their website is www.destinationmoonbasealpha.com. So if you want to find out information about that, definitely check out the website. It's going to be a big event. And again, it's 15 months away. There's a lot of stuff going on. Again, COVID has affected so many people and so many things. And, conventions that are taking place this year, unfortunately, a lot of events are not happening. Unfortunately, there's things that, I would be a part of this year and unfortunately are not happening. And I'm just, praying that, we get past this with this whole COVID thing. So anyway, just be aware of that. And then Ross, I want to give the opportunity to talk about, the stuff that you're doing. So I'll leave that to you right now.
All right. Well, these are my radio shows. Picture Perfect airs Fridays at 6 o'clock. So we just missed that. But Sunday night at 10 o'clock, it's a Father's Day show on the Lost Chord, which is unusual and neglected repertoire. This is on WWFM, the classical network. So it's a classical music station. So it's all music about sports for Father's Day. I'll have some, the highlight of the hour are selections from an opera by William Schumann called The Mighty Casey. So there'll be some selections from that. There'll be a piece called Rugby by Arthur Honegger. There'll be a piece by Bohuslav Martinu called Halftime. And Charles Ives, the Yale-Princeton football game will all be on that program Sunday night at 10. You can hear WWFM, the classical network, at wwfm.org. You can see it on the screen. If you're in Easton, it's at 93.1. And pretty much Penargil covers the Lehigh Valley at 89.5. So anyway, but all the frequencies are at wwfm.org. Okay. There you go.
Thanks, Ross. Yeah, absolutely. And just to let everybody know, for upcoming events that's planned and in the works and is going to be happening, I just want to let fans know, on Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, Sunday, July 12th, it's going to be at a special time that we usually do when we have special times on Sundays. And it's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And again, that's Sunday, July 12th. Academy Award winning special effects supervisor, Brian Johnson, will be joining us on the show. And of course, he is known for 2001: A Space Odyssey. He's known as the special effects director for Space 1999's Year 1 and Year 2. Also, he was the visual effects supervisor for Alien, as well as The Empire Strikes Back. So he will be joining us on that day. I will be asking people, the fans of the show to just, if you have questions, we'll be doing a Q&A with Brian, as we've done in the past. We did with Nick. So if you have any questions, please feel free to start instant messaging me those questions, and anything you would like to ask, we will be doing a Q&A in regards to that. So I'm very excited about that. And again, that will be on Sunday, July 12th, and that will be Eastern Daylight Time, 4 p.m. We're doing it a little bit early to accommodate Brian and also our, viewers that are overseas in the UK and also in France, in Europe, just because of the time differential. So just wanted to put that out there. And then lastly, this Sunday, we will be broadcasting, and my son is going to be on, Ryan Belquist Ledger, and it's going to be Father's Day. So I'm very pleased to have Ryan be joining me as my very special guest co-host. And it'll be great to be able to spend time with him as we talk about the 1976 movie Logan's Run. So we'll be discussing that this Sunday, and that will be on June 21st, and that will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So very much looking forward to that. So for now, I think that pretty much wraps everything up. Ross, again, as always, I want to thank you very much for joining me. It's been fun and it's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to you joining me again sometime soon.
Well, thank you, Roy. Ryan knows you're over 30, right?
Yeah, he does.
Okay. All right.
Interesting enough, it's this year our ages are actually, he's half my age this year, so he's going to be turning 27 in September. So, and I'll be 54. So it's kind of interesting, kind of scary and kind of weird, but yeah. So he's literally going to be half my age. Intergenerational
talk with Logan's Run. I'm growing the Peter Ustinov. I'm doing the Peter Ustinov thing here, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
I just need the cats. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Roy.
Oh, absolutely. And to our viewers, if you're unable to tune in, I do have this saved on the YouTube channel. So all you have to do is just go to my name on YouTube. You can view the episodes there. The episodes are also being viewed on Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner page. You can view them there as well. And also, if you're unable to view on Sunday and you are a dad, I just want to wish all the dads out there a very happy Father's Day. And again, live long and prosper. Stay safe during this whole COVID situation. Things are starting to get better, apparently in some areas, and some areas not. The only thing I would say is just be safe, use social distancing. We're not out of the woods yet with this, and some areas are beginning to spike because people are getting a little sloppy. So please just be safe and be aware. It's always be aware of your surroundings, folks. It's a really scary time, and we want to get out of this on the right foot, and let's just, stay safe with everything. So with that, live long and prosper. Thank you, Ross, and good night, everybody.
Good night.